Welcome to Live with the League. I'm Emily, the Assistant Director of Member Experience and Learning here. Thanks for joining us today. We have a packed legislative focus show lined up for you as we continue to track what's happening at the Capitol and what it means for all of you across Michigan. Today, we've got almost everybody from our state and federal affairs team for an update on several key issues moving through the legislature, plus a look back on last week's legislative reception and some of the advocacy conversations happening right now with lawmakers. As always, if you're watching live, please feel free to drop your questions into the chat or Q&A, and we will answer as many as we can throughout the show. Let's get right into it. So as I mentioned, we've got the A team minus one here with us today. John Lamacchia, Jen Rigtrink, and Dave Hodgkins. Thanks for being here, everyone. There's been a lot happening in Lansing over the last couple of weeks. We're going to jump right in and work through some of the major issues our members should be watching. First, John, I'm going to start with you. Let's start with the continuing care communities legislation. What is this package aiming to do, and where does it all currently stand?
Yeah, thanks, Emily, and welcome back. So this is a two-bill package, House Bills 5572 and 5573, and they deal primarily with continuing care facilities. And when we think about that, for reference, in the state of Michigan, we have things like nursing homes, long-term assisted living, hospice care, memory care. There are some facilities in the state that essentially provide all of that. So everywhere from independent living all the way to hospice. And they are designated under the law as a continuing care community under the Continuing Care Communities Act. What they are trying to do, and by they, I mean the interest group that represents them, currently right now, they are not tax exempt under the law as it pertains to property taxes. They are 501c3. They enjoy certain tax exempt status on things. But when it comes to property taxes, there is several of these in the state, about 35 of them, that currently still pay some form of property tax. And so they are trying to utilize the legislative process in which to have a full exemption on their property. We object to that for a variety of reasons. And while this doesn't impact every community, if you're a community like Holland or Kentwood or Dexter, who were here to testify last week in opposition, those three communities, they are either the largest or the second largest taxpayer in the city itself. So we're very concerned about the implications of this legislation as it relates to those specific facilities that are in a number of our communities across the state. But more importantly, here, there's a second bill that deals with, or maybe I should say more important, just as important and maybe more impactful to everybody. It is to list 501c3s in the definition as a charitable nonprofit, essentially making them tax exempt in all cases. Now, the sponsor has said they want to work on language to narrowly tailor that bill to match the first bill, but as written, it would turn all 501c3s into the state into charitable nonprofits, essentially giving them and granting them tax exempt status. And so the fiscal impact of that is large and unknown, according to the fiscal analyst. So something we're tracking, watching, opposing, and will continue to do so unless there are significant changes made.
Thanks, John. And as we think about these things happening, what can our members do to be engaged on this piece of legislation? Is there anything we want them to be engaged on right now?
Yeah, I think on this particular piece, I don't often say this, but I will reach out probably specifically to all of the communities that are impacted,
Mhm.
mainly because we will focus on that first bill, 5572, to begin with as a way in which to try to push back. We utilize our members in which to do that. Many of you have heard from me already, either when this issue came about last session or now that it's come about this session. And then if it continues to gain traction, we may ramp up our efforts with our membership at large. But with so many other things going on right now, we'll take a much more targeted approach on this one.
Makes sense. All right. Well, staying with you, revenue sharing is always a major issue for our members. We talk about it, I think, every live with the league. What conversations are happening right now as the budget process continues to move?
Yeah, so this is an exciting one, and something that, as we all know, when we talk about revenue sharing, we've talked about the revenue sharing trust fund. It's something that is always top of mind for us. It's the league's number one priority. And well, we spent a lot of time talking about housing lately. That's not the only big issue we've been working on. The Revenue Sharing Trust Fund, much more behind the scenes, trying to get some action on it. And we were able to do that last week. So, in working with the Senate and Senator John Cherry as the General Government Subcommittee Chair of Appropes and the Appropriations Committee Chair, Sarah Anthony, we were able to move a three-bill package that would institute the Revenue Sharing Trust Fund. We had an opportunity to testify jointly last Thursday with the Michigan Townships Association. We got about a minute and a half to testify, which is okay because we got up there. We said thank you. I let them know that it had been 8 years, 4 months, and 24 days from the first day this was introduced back in 2017 by then Rep. Rob Verheulen, and let them know how important it was to us and how thankful we were to them for beginning this process once again. And we are hopeful that we can get it across the finish line. We think that the bills will pass the full Senate maybe as soon as this week. And then it will be incumbent upon us to talk with the House and the governor's office to ensure not only is this a part of the budget negotiation, but that it is actually in the final budget and that these three bills move along with it and hopefully signed into law here before the end of this year.
Very exciting. So, even though it's good news, what can our members do to ensure this crosses the finish line like we want it to?
Yeah, we have had several members over the course of really the last couple of sessions. So we had over 527 letters sent to the governor at the end of last session. We've had over 200 people sign up in support of the Revenue Sharing Trust Fund. I think Betsy can continue, or Betsy can put in that link into the chat, and we can continue to sign up there. And then make sure we continue to talk to our legislators about that. Right now, as we anticipate it's going to come through the House, it's not that it's not important to really talk to senators. We know that we will have the votes in that chamber. It's really talking to the House and maybe just as importantly, reaching out to the governor's office to express your support and really encourage her to include this in the final budget that may pass here by mid-year.
Absolutely. All right, we'll continue to keep an eye on that. Dave, beyond those larger issues, there's been quite a lot of committee activity lately. What are some of the other items that are seeing movement right now?
Yeah, so a couple of things that we were tracking last week. There's the disabled veterans piece of legislation, House Bill 5407. So currently, the surviving spouse only continues to retain those benefits so long as he or she does not remarry. The bill would remove that provision. During testimony, we heard that this is not expected to increase any financial strain whatsoever on local units of government, but that's likely not the case. In fact, the House fiscal analysis that was attached to that bill estimated that it'd be in the ballpark of a $15 to $25 million expansion in terms of property tax impact. So we did oppose that legislation, and it's something that we're going to continue to monitor going forward. But it wouldn't be Michigan if we didn't have a disabled veterans property tax bill every single session. So that's just something we'll keep our eyes on. We also were tracking some data center discussion. So the House Oversight Committee on Corporate Subsidies and Local Investment has had a few hearings now on data centers, inviting developers, owners, residents to basically just air grievances and have a conversation about this. There's no real legislation that has been attached to these discussions, but we do know that there is other legislation out there pertaining to water usage, energy usage, repealing tax abatements, all kinds of things. So that's something that we just want to stay apprised of going forward. And then some good news, a long time coming on this, but this week I just had a conversation this morning with some folks, and the oath of office bills are finally being dusted off after unanimous votes in both the House and the Senate. So the House Elections Integrity Committee tomorrow morning will be taking up two of the Senate bills, and there was an agreement over in the Senate to take up the other two bills in that four-bill package moving forward later this week, possibly into next week. So good news, those are going to be moving forward. And just as a reminder for those, just real quick, these are the bills that would say that you cannot seat a locally elected official until the first day of the month following an election. And that's a bit of an answer to Prop 2 from 2022 that requires clerks to account for ballots that come in 6 days after an election now. So that puts some charters in conflict with state law for those who usually sit their local elected officials like the Monday or the Tuesday following an election. So that's good news.
Right. Makes sense. Thanks, Dave. Okay, so one of the conversations as we talk about committee activity and legislative activity has been around license plate reading cameras. John, can you explain what's happening there, what's being proposed, and what local leaders should know? You're muted, John. We're both, it's happening to
That
both
is,
of us today. It's
that's
the Mondayest Monday.
that's smart when Dave's talking, not so smart when I try to talk. But so yeah, there's a piece of legislation out there dealing with license plate readers. Many of you may use these in your communities in different forms and fashions. One of the companies that provides it is Flock, so Flock cameras. And what they do is they take a picture of the license plate. Law enforcement may utilize that to solve particular crimes. If you think everything from human trafficking to kidnapping to a variety of different things. And there is some questions about those in terms of one, their applicability, in terms of a surveillance mechanism. And I think if you talk to our police and chiefs, they don't think of it as surveillance in any means. And then you have an entity like ACLU who's very concerned about privacy rights. So how long do you retain the information that's collected? Do you do reporting on it? A variety of different things. And right now there's a sort of sentiment across the state in terms of, yes, these are valid ways in which to conduct police work, but let's give the public confidence at the same time that we're not surveillancing them in a way that they aren't aware of or a way that they wouldn't appreciate. So the legislation attempts to draw some guardrails around that. One, as a way in which to give communities confidence in terms of the framework in which it's done, and two, to give the public confidence as a way in which these operate. Now, the Michigan Police Chiefs, who we work with very directly on issues like this, is opposed to the legislation. And the main reason that they are opposed to it, or one of the main reasons they are opposed to it, is the retention period of the data. So the actual photograph of the license plate itself. Right now, the legislation says 14 days. If you look across the country for the many different states that have implemented legislation like this, the average is around 30 days. And so there's a big question here in terms of how long should it be retained? And when it is retained, we know that crimes can be solved well past 30 days or 14 days or even, 3 months. And so they're trying to have thoughtful conversations on how we give the public confidence that these are the right tools, but also ensure that law enforcement has the right tools at their disposal to ensure that they can solve crimes when they happen in our communities.
Great. Thanks for that explainer, John. Jen, another item on the league's radar is plumbing legislation. Walk us through what's in play here.
Yeah, so we have been following a ton of different bills that impact housing in one way or another. And so there is a bill that had a hearing in House Reg Reform. There were actually two plumbing bills, but one specifically is dealing with licensed plumbers and the ability to also be an inspector. Currently, plumbing is the only licensed trade where you have to surrender your license if you want to become a plumbing inspector. And so we supported that bill. Plumbers should not be able to inspect their own work, but it makes a lot of sense when we are in such short supply of inspectors, and this is the only trade that has that restriction. So we supported that bill last week. There was another one dealing with backflow and who can actually inspect that kind of work, and we also supported that. But looking at ways that the legislature can actually help housing and move things along when it comes to building. I mean, these are two small examples of things that, help moving the process forward, regardless of, building the actual house to the inspections and things like that.
Thanks, Jen. I want to stay on housing for a moment because we have a question in the chat about it. This individual states, I understand MML has reported that the housing availability bills are no longer a threat. Do you predict that this is a permanent stop in one way or the other? What is the status of the MML MTA bills?
Yeah, so the housing availability bills, if that's referring to the My Home program, we're still, those are sitting in the House GovOps. We're still pushing that as one piece of the puzzle to move housing forward. Definitely the solution or alternative to preemption, which we know doesn't equal to production. And so, we're going to continue to push for those. If the housing availability bills are referring to the housing readiness bills, the 9 bill package that is a preemption, while we are making good headway on the issues with those bills, I don't think anyone can say that they're not a threat. They will be a threat until the legislature adjourns at the end of this year, because those bills can be taken up at any time, and are continuing to be pushed by the proponents of those as the silver bullet to housing in Michigan. So we need our members to continue to engage on those bills and to be able to tell the story of what's going on locally. What are the zoning reforms that you have been working on in your community? Have those reforms, once instituted, actually led to something different, some kind of different outcome where you're seeing an uptick in production? Because that's what we're hearing from proponents is just preempt local government, get them out of the way, and then we're going to start to see this uptick in supply that's going to miraculously end our housing crisis here in Michigan. So, just to be clear, housing preemption bills that they're calling the housing readiness package, definitely still a threat and still need to be pushed on, as well as our members continuing to tell their stories about the zoning reform they've done, the actual need of why projects are not advancing in their communities when it comes to that gap between what it costs to build something and what somebody can actually afford it at. We need to keep that communication up with legislators nonstop here through the end of the year.
Jen, sticking with you. Oh, go ahead, John.
I intentionally came off mute this time.
All right.
And Jen, you're 100% right. 100% right. And I would add this, right? I think those that are pushing preemption would like to give the impression, right, that things are essentially a no-go right now, because that gives our members an opportunity to maybe relax and then for them to maybe come back and push this. This is not an issue for us to relax on, period, right? We need to continue to talk to legislators about, one, what we're doing well in our communities, as Jen had said, but two, sort of the harmful impacts to preemption legislation in terms of what it means for true community planning, how we interact with the residents in our communities, and how we build our communities within the context that we find to be best meets the needs based on our unique characteristics. Like I said, they would like nothing more than for us to sort of relax for a moment. And we absolutely cannot do that. I know members across the state, both, our members in terms of cities and villages, townships and counties, have all been adopting resolutions in opposition. We would encourage you to do that. I know we posted a blog on it the other day. We can put that back in here. We have resources on our website that act as samples that you can utilize and copy, but we must not let up on this. I think the second that we let up is the second that we give them an opportunity to get this done, and we cannot let that happen. We need to continue to defend, our ability to have a say in this, our ability to listen to residents, and our ability as local officials to really engage in that process of local democracy in a way that matters. And I would encourage you to keep the pedal down, continue to talk to those legislators, continue to make your voice heard, and tell your residents about it, right? Make sure they're informed, make sure they're well educated on this, and have them reach out as well.
Thanks, John. No, we have absolutely no chill when it comes to this one. We are staying full throttle. Okay, Jen, another question for you before we shift gears a little bit. Is there a status on the introduction of a new community redevelopment tax credit? If so, would we expect to see this move before the end of 2026?
So yeah, the community revitalization tax credit was introduced 2 weeks ago. I want to say, and as well as a statewide housing tax credit. So both of those pieces of legislation have been introduced in the House. The I would say it's up in the air when we see those move. Right now, House leadership is taking it on all the different tax abatements or tax credit tools, are taking it bill by bill and referring and reading those and trying to, I guess, make a decision on what happens with each one. I mean, that's where we still have our Commercial Redevelopment Act and the Commercial Rehabilitation Act, PA 210 and 255. Are still caught up in that process. The bills out of the Senate completed the process there, came over to the House. The House bills have had a committee hearing and are sitting on the floor, yet there's been no movement at all. And again, here's another example of local tools that we currently have right now, where locals can be using those tools for commercial properties, many times that are going to be developed into a mixed use development with some housing units. And we have those local tools, and the legislature is not acting upon those. So those both sunset at the end of last year. We have the obsolete Property Rehabilitation Act getting ready to sunset at the end of this year. So again, these are things that you can talk to your legislators about, of why are you not moving these tools that we already had that have been sunset and moving forward. That's a big long answer to say the CRTC bill, at some point I believe we'll have a hearing, but it's really going to be, again, a roll of the dice in what's going to happen with economic development here going, once the budgets all shake out and see what's going to happen. Hopefully we'll start to see some more movement on these different tax credit and tax abatement bills.
Thanks, Jen. All right, John, over to you. What's the latest on property tax reform?
Yeah, so as you can tell, there's no shortage of activity last week, and we've been talking about property tax reform for a while now, both as an organization, some things that we would like to see happen, but over the last few months, in terms of what the House, particularly the House Republicans, may want to do in terms of reducing property taxes for current homeowners. They officially released their package here this last week. It's a 8-bill package, if I get that right. House Bills 5872 through 5880. And they do a variety of different things, but the core of those is they eliminate the pop-up or the uncapping when homes are sold. They eliminate the real estate transfer tax. They add a sales tax on services to backfill lost revenue, and I'll come back to that. And then they eliminate both the state education tax, or the SET as we often call it, and then they eliminate all personal property tax. So in total, that's about $4.9 billion in property tax reductions. And the hope is that a increase in, or at least the implementation of, a sales tax on services. While the specific services were not identified in the legislation, it is a goal of the Speaker and of the House Republicans to try to hold the local units of government and schools as harmless as possible. And I say as possible because we think it will be very difficult to raise $4.9 billion off of a sales tax on services. And the way in which that bill reads is schools receive their funding first, local government second, and then if there's not enough money in the pot, local governments get a prorated amount. And so that probably indicates to us, both as analyzing the policy and from an organizational standpoint, that local government likely will not be held harmless. I don't want to say that definitively just yet, because the list of identified services that will be charged is not yet public. And at the same time, we want to make sure that we are able to have a thoughtful conversation on this. There is a need to have discussions on property tax reform, kind of in the current climate, particularly in an election cycle. How the details of that work are going to be very, very important in terms of where our support or opposition may ultimately lie. But based on what we have heard before and now what we have seen in terms of introduced legislation, we definitely have some serious concerns about how local government would be held harmless and then what the potential negative consequences of the elimination of the pop-up are. Even though that there are likely some constitutional concerns to that and a lot of other questions that need to be answered. But we will be working on that on a continuing basis. It is possible that those bills could come up relatively quickly in the House, although we don't have any definite confirmation of that, no committee posting just yet. But it would not surprise us if those bills made their first appearance in committee as soon as this week.
All right. Thanks, John. Switching gears a little bit, it was quite a flurry of activity in our office last week. The league partnered with SEMCOG and the Michigan Townships Association to host a special legislative reception. Dave, I want to start with you on this. What was the event? What did it provide from an advocacy and relationship building standpoint?
Yeah, so it was a legislative reception, as you said. The topic tended to be dominated on housing because John Lamacchia had spent the prior 2 days constructing a mini house in our office, which I'll let you tell them about, John, because I know you're very proud of that. Uh, but it was a great opportunity for us to place a lot of our members in the direct path of lawmakers. We had a great showing. You often hear us talk about how local governments are all unique. We brag about that every time we have conversations with lawmakers, but like it was an excellent opportunity to actually bring a lot of those members in to be able to showcase what they themselves are doing and what they wanted to brag about directly to the lawmakers. So it was a great event, getting to put faces and names together and make those connections. And then again, we talked a lot about the preemption housing bill package, and we're able to walk some lawmakers through just what that actually looks like. And so I don't know, John, do you want to tell them about your little mini house that
John,
you built?
John, tell us all about it, please.
I often joke about working here that it's amazing what you can do with a crazy idea and a little bit of freedom. Um, and it, as many of you know, have been tracking what we've been talking about around the legislation dealing with preemption is that there are a couple of bills in there dealing with lot sizes and minimum dwelling unit sizes. And the lot size is set at 1,500 square feet and the dwelling unit size at a maximum of 500 square feet in terms of what local government has the ability to effectively govern. And so we were sitting around a staff meeting last week, and I decided, based on something somebody had said, to get up and go measure our training room. And so, for those of you that may have been in our office, have seen our training room. Those of you that haven't, we have a large, basically square room that we use for different events and type things. And it just so happens that it was 1,480 square feet. And so we taped it off. We created a floor plan for a 500 square foot home. We taped setbacks so people could see what a 15-foot setback in the front would look like based on this legislation, what 5-foot setbacks on the side would look like. And then because we have a few pieces of furniture in this office, we were actually able to stage it like a house because Jen and her husband also are small business owners and own a mattress store. We were able to bring in a bed and really set this up for people to walk through and understand not just what it felt like in that situation, but really to show them what the maximum limits of local government's authority would be under these bills in terms of what they could set via ordinance. And so it was a very powerful, sort of visual for those that learn that way, which is much like myself. And so we were able to actually walk people through the door in our training room, walk them through the fake front door with a really nice welcome mat, and had a little kitchen
Shoes,
and
actual shoes on the
actual
like a
food.
shoe mat. Yeah.
And we were very clear with legislators that we weren't saying that this was bad or wrong, right? We've been very specific to say in these cases that, tiny homes, as they're often referred to, or smaller lot sizes are not bad, but it has to be context appropriate.
Mhm.
Okay. And we know that that is not context appropriate in every neighborhood, in every city and village across the state. And we really firmly believe that while, yes, we are in the business of making sure our members understand what best practices around zoning are, helping educate them in terms of how to update their zoning, our members are doing the hard work right now. and they do that on a daily basis, that shouldn't, cost them their ability to have those conversations at the local level. They should be rewarded for that. And we wanted to make sure legislators saw very directly what the constraints of this legislation was and why it's so important for us to continue to have a voice in how we develop housing in this state.
Yeah, super creative. I loved seeing the pictures come out of that. So for maybe Dave or Jen, if you want to jump in here, what were some of the notable conversations or themes that came out of that evening and out of the creative setup that was created for that?
Yeah, I'll add to kind of where John was going with the context. So we were able to show on that 1,500 square foot lot with the 500 square foot dwelling with the, you know, prescribed setbacks within one of the bills, there's no room for a driveway. And, if we were New York or Boston, someplace that has robust public transportation, that'd be one thing. But we don't. And, on-street parking, that may work in some places, but we also have to remember we're Michigan. And
Mhm.
so even on-street parking sometimes doesn't work if you have to clear the streets from snow. And so being able to add, I guess, that context with the visual, I think was, we had a lot of ahas for some folks, as well as, I mean, we got some of those comments, oh, I wish my yard was only this big, so then I wouldn't have to mow it. And we said, well, that's your choice. You can. This is not a bad thing, but we're also trying to push back on the narrative around affordability and that the preemption bills need to be done to provide homes for families. We put a full-size mattress in that one bedroom. If we would have put a queen, it would have gone from wall to wall. I mean, maybe there's some families out there that are still sharing one bed, but not normally. That is not a family home. And so we were able to, again, just try to make folks understand that some of the claims that are being made around why the preemption is needed don't stand true when it's staring you right there in the face. And the same thing with that 500 square foot dwelling, it costs what it costs to build that. That does not mean just because it's small that it's now affordable. And so we were able to showcase things like that. I thought it was great, and John knows I push back harder than anyone on it. I thought that the taping of the stuff was great, but didn't want to folks to walk away and be like, oh, this isn't that bad. And they didn't, but we really stressed again that this is what local government can govern to, and not above. So I thought
For the record,
overall it was huge success.
I thought it was a great idea the entire time, John. I never pushed back on it. Um, well, no, just going piggybacking off what you said, Jen. So the aha moments, there were plenty of them, right? The realization, and if anything, we were actually a little bit generous with the size and things that we had to keep pointing out to folks. We live in Michigan. You might want some insulation in the walls, right? So, if anything, like it was actually a bigger space than what they probably would have actually had. But seeing the lawmakers kind of walk around through there and look around and be like, all right, I kind of get it now. There's a visual to the words of this legislation. It was very impactful.
It's some of the most fun I've had here, I'll be honest. Not only just in setting it up and sort of doing it and kind of takes you back to, being a kid, building things, stuff like that. And the fact that we get to do it at work's awesome. But I also got to be the wall police. And it's like, no, you can't walk through there. No, you're standing on the wall. No, like you just kicked the doorway. Just to make sure that as people were in that space, they recognized very clearly kind of the confines of it. And so that was good. So I know photos come in or questions come in about, will we share some photos of it? We had a photographer here from our staff and a photographer here from SEMCOG. I'm sure at some point we'll put that together once we get an opportunity to see them and put a blog up on it and make sure we share that or inform members in a different way. So stay tuned on that, but just nothing right at this moment.
All right. Great work, team. As we are getting ready to sort of close out today, a lot we've covered. Is there anything else our members should have their eye on in the next couple of weeks before we meet again for Live at the League?
Well, I would say, it's sort of watching days in the calendar right now for us.
Mhm.
So both the House and the Senate will be in this week. The House is actually not in the following week, and then they'll be back for a couple before they break, most likely for the week that legislators are on Mackinac Island for the Detroit Chamber Policy Conference. And then after that, there will be about 4 weeks before the end of June, which is when they hope to wrap the budget up. We didn't talk a lot about the budget today, but that is starting to move at a much faster pace than what it did last year. We anticipate that it is entirely possible it will be done by June 30. That is because it's an election year and they don't want to sit through the summer doing what they did last year. They need to be able to get out, knock doors, and talk to constituents and stuff like that as they come into the primary in August. But right now, I think what you're going to see is a lot of budget focus. Make sure that they're going to focus on probably property tax reform, particularly in the House, and then seeing if they can't get that budget done by June 30. And so I would continue to stay vigilant on the housing issues like we talked about, continue to talk to your legislators, and then continue to express your support for the Revenue Sharing Trust Fund.
And Emily, I just want to add to the housing talk. Right now, what our members could do is go to your state reps, your Senate, when they have their town halls, their coffee hours, engage in the conversation around housing, and don't come at it from a defensive mode. And come at it from, okay, what am I doing wrong? What is my city doing wrong? Please tell me what we are doing wrong and why we need this legislation to preempt us. And I think that helps start to get legislators to think in a different way, because they're hearing from the folks that actually are part of the decision process at the local level. I would say from the housing readiness, there seems to be two major stakeholders that are missing at the table. One, local government, but also developers who are actually doing workforce, affordable, attainable housing projects. There are some builders there, but these are the builders for the most part that are building single family market rate homes. And not that that's a bad thing, but that's a completely different discussion if you engage the developers and the builders who are trying to build actual workforce or affordable housing in your communities. And so I think those two voices need to start talking to legislators together, and talking about that gap again between what something costs and then what it could be offered in your community, so that a teacher, police officer, somebody who works in healthcare systems, somebody just coming out of college getting their first job, what kind of putting faces to the folks that would be living in those housing units is important.
Thanks so much, team. Lots of great information today. All right, before we wrap up, a few quick reminders. First, our upcoming Elected Officials Academy Core Summit and the Advanced Summit focused on trust and belonging are happening May 15th and 16th in Bay City. This is a great opportunity to continue your professional development and connect with elected leaders from around the state. The Core Summit offers the 8 required core credits needed to complete level 1 of the Academy, while the Advanced Summit offers 9 elective credits to help you continue. I think I said trust and belonging. It's trust and effective engagement. Trust and belonging is another program we have here at the League. So if you want to hear more about that, we've got a great lineup. We'll be in Bay City in person May 15th and 16th. We have another reminder, applications are now open for the 2026 Women's Municipal Leadership Program, the cornerstone of the League 1650 project. This program is designed for women interested in growing into municipal management roles and offers a unique combination of instruction, executive coaching, peer connection, and practical leadership preparation. If you or someone you know is interested in participating in that program, applications are open now through Friday, May 15th. So we encourage you to learn more and apply or share with folks who might be interested. And finally, our Community Excellence Award program is still accepting projects from our community. So if you've done something stellar in your community that you're proud of, that you want to highlight, go ahead and apply for the Community Excellence Award. The deadline for that's been extended to April 30th. And if you've got a project, you've still got time to get that in. That's all we've got for you today. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you next time online with the League, and have a great week.